We traveled across multiple countries to witness and experience what it really takes to harvest some of the most extreme fruits on Earth. And this is not what you think, because what looks like a simple piece of fruit in a supermarket actually comes from processes that can be dangerous, highly precise, or unbelievably intense. And in this video, we are going from the easiest fruits to harvest all the way to the most difficult, the most dangerous, and finally, the most expensive fruit in the world. And trust me, by the end of this, you will never look at fruit the same way again. Because some of these harvests require workers to climb trees taller than a building without safety gear. Some involve lifting loads heavier than your entire body weight. Others depend on machines that can harvest entire fields in just hours. And the craziest part is, one mistake in many of these processes can instantly destroy the fruit and make it worthless. Which means every movement has to be precise. Every decision has to be timed perfectly, and every second matters. So we are starting at level 1, where harvesting looks easy, simple, and almost effortless. But even here, things are not as basic as they seem. Because even the most common fruits require exact timing to pick. If you harvest too early, they won't ripen properly. And if you harvest too late, they can become too soft, damaged, or impossible to transport. And that's just the beginning, because as we move forward, each level gets harder, heavier, and more intense, until we reach fruits that push human skill and endurance to the limit. And then beyond that, we enter a completely different world, where technology takes over, where machines and robots are now replacing human hands, scanning, selecting, and harvesting fruit with extreme precision. And just when you think it cannot get any more insane, we reach the final level, where fruits are no longer just food, but luxury products, handled one by one, protected, inspected, and sold for prices that most people would never believe. And that is where everything changes, because at that point, harvesting is no longer about speed or quantity, it becomes about perfection, where even the smallest imperfection can reduce the value dramatically. And that is why the journey we are about to go through is not just about farming. It is about understanding scale, risk, and precision at a level most people never see, because globally, billions of pounds of fruit are harvested every single year. And behind that number are millions of workers, machines, and systems, all working together to make it happen. But the way each fruit is harvested can be completely different. Some require speed, some require strength, and others require patience and extreme care. And the difference between them is what makes this journey so fascinating. Because we are not just showing you how fruits are harvested. We are showing you the extremes, the methods that push limits, the techniques that look almost unbelievable, and the environments where this all takes place. From massive farms stretching as far as you can see, to dense plantations, where every step is calculated. And as we move through each level, you will start to notice something the higher we go. The less forgiving the process becomes, and the more skill it requires. Until we reach a point where harvesting is no longer just work, becomes a high-stakes operation where everything must go right. And this is exactly why we structured this video as a progression, because each level builds on the last, showing you how complexity increases, how effort multiplies, and how the margin for error disappears. And right now, at the beginning, things may look simple, but that will not last long, because very soon, we will move into situations where workers are risking their safety, where timing becomes critical, and where entire harvests depend on precision and coordination, and eventually, we will reach the point where even machines struggle to keep up. And only the most advanced technology can handle the job. But before we get there, you need to see where it all starts. Because even the simplest harvests already require more skill than most people expect, and that is what makes this journey so interesting. Because it constantly challenges what you think you know, replacing it with something much more intense, much more complex, and much more impressive. And as we move forward, keep this in mind. Every fruit you see has gone through one of these processes, whether simple or extreme, and the difference between them is what we are about to uncover, step by step, level by level, all the way to the most insane fruit harvest on Earth. The mission is simple, but the execution is not. We are going to go through multiple levels of fruit harvesting, starting from the easiest and moving step by step toward the most extreme methods used anywhere in the world. And to make this work, there is one rule that cannot be broken. Every fruit must be harvested at the exact right moment because, unlike most products, fruit cannot be fixed after it is picked. If it is too early, it will never develop the right taste, and if it is too late, it becomes too soft, damaged, and loses its value immediately. And that is why timing is everything in this process, but timing alone is not enough, because each fruit has its own conditions, its own signals, and its own risks, which means farmers must rely on experience, observation, and precision to get it right every single time. And this is where things start to get interesting. Because even at the lowest levels, what looks simple is actually controlled and calculated. For example, in controlled farms where fruits like strawberries or guavas are grown, workers cannot just pick randomly. They must look for exact color changes, surface texture, and firmness. Because those small details determine whether the fruit can survive transportation or not. And transportation is a huge part of this system, because fruits are not just grown to be eaten locally. They are shipped across cities, across countries, and sometimes across continents, which means they must be harvested in a condition that allows them to last for days or even weeks without losing quality. And that alone adds another layer of complexity, because now farmers are not just thinking about ripeness. They are thinking about durability, market standards, and export requirements, and those standards can be extremely strict, especially for fruits that are sold internationally, where even small scratches, uneven color, or minor imperfections can reduce the price significantly. And this is why harvesting is not just about picking fruit, it is about protecting value, because every fruit represents time, labor, land, and resources, and losing quality means losing money. And when you scale this up to millions or even billions of pounds of fruit, the impact becomes massive, and that is why entire systems are built around this process, from how workers move in the field, to how fruits are placed into containers, to how quickly they are transported after picking. Everything is designed to reduce damage and maintain consistency, and as we move into higher levels, you will start to see how these systems become more intense, more demanding, and more specialized. Because not all fruits can be handled the same way. Some are strong and can handle rougher conditions, but others are extremely delicate and require careful handling at every step. And this difference is what separates basic harvesting from advanced harvesting, because once you move beyond simple fruits, you are no longer just picking. You're managing a process that involves coordination between multiple workers, tools, and sometimes even machines, and the margin for error becomes smaller and smaller. And this is where the stakes begin to rise, because now a single mistake does not just affect one fruit, it can affect an entire batch, or even an entire shipment. And that is exactly why experienced workers are so valuable in this industry, because they know how to read the signs, how to handle each fruit, and how to maintain speed without sacrificing quality. And speed is another factor that cannot be ignored, because harvesting windows are often limited. Some fruits must be picked within a specific time frame, sometimes just a few days, to ensure peak quality, which means workers must move quickly while still maintaining precision. And that combination is what makes harvesting so challenging, because you are balancing speed, accuracy, and care all at the same time. And as we continue through this journey, you will see how this balance becomes harder and harder to maintain. Because the fruits become heavier, the environments become more difficult, the methods become more extreme, and eventually, we will reach a point where human ability alone is not enough. And that is when machines and advanced technology step in. But before we get there, we need to go through the levels where human skill is still the most important factor, where coordination, strength, and precision define the outcome. And that is exactly where we are heading next. Because from this point forward, harvesting is no longer just careful. It starts to become physically demanding, risky, and far more intense than most people expect. And this is where everything begins to change. We are now entering the next level where harvesting is no longer just about timing and precision. It becomes physical, heavier, and much harder to control. And this is where you start to see the real effort behind fruits that people eat every day. Because at this level, workers are not just picking. They are carrying weight, coordinating movements, and working in conditions that can quickly become exhausting. And one of the first examples is bananas, which might look simple in stores but are anything but simple to harvest. Because each bunch can weigh up to 30 kilograms, which means a single cut is not enough. It requires two people working together. One person cuts the stem, while the other supports the entire weight to prevent it from crashing to the ground. Because if it hits the ground, the bananas bruise instantly and lose quality. And this has to be done repeatedly across entire fields, often under high temperatures, which makes the process physically demanding and continuous. And the pressure comes from the fact that they cannot slow down too much, because harvesting windows are limited and the fruit must be moved quickly to the next stage. And as intense as that sounds, it is still not the most dangerous part yet, because now we move to coconuts, where the difficulty increases sharply. Because these trees can reach heights of 10 to 15 meters, and in many regions, workers still climb these trees manually without modern safety equipment, using only ropes or simple techniques to grip the trunk. And once they reach the top, they must balance themselves while cutting down heavy clusters of coconuts. And at that height, one mistake can lead to serious injury. And yet this is done daily across large plantations, because machines are not always practical in these environments. And this is where harvesting shifts from being physically demanding to actually risky. Because now, height, balance, and precision all come into play at the same time. And if that was not enough, we move to watermelons, which introduce a completely different kind of challenge. Because instead of height, the issue here is scale and coordination. Fields can stretch across large areas, and thousands of fruits must be harvested quickly, so farmers form human chains, passing each watermelon from one person to another across long distances, creating a continuous flow that allows them to move large volumes efficiently, and each watermelon must still be handled carefully, because dropping or throwing too hard can damage the fruit, so even in a fast-moving system, control is still required. And this combination of speed and coordination makes the process both efficient and physically tiring. And then we reach one of the most intense harvesting methods in this level. Palm fruit harvesting, where workers use long-handled sickles to cut down heavy fruit bunches from tall trees. And each bunch can weigh between 10 to 25 kilograms. And they are tightly attached, which means the cut must be precise and strong enough to detach the entire cluster in one motion. And when it falls, it drops with significant force. So workers must stay clear while still maintaining control of the surrounding area. And this creates a situation where strength, timing, and awareness all have to come together perfectly, because there is very little room for error. And all of this is happening repeatedly across large plantations day after day, because the demand for palm oil is massive and continues to grow. And what makes this level so different from the previous one is that now harvesting is no longer just about choosing the right fruit. It is about handling weight, managing risk, and maintaining efficiency under pressure, and every step requires more energy, more coordination, and more focus, because the consequences of mistakes are bigger and the workload is heavier. And this is exactly where you start to see the limits of human labor, because while workers can handle these tasks, the effort required is significant, and the scale makes it even more challenging. And that is why the next level exists, because once production reaches a certain size, relying only on human strength is no longer enough. And that is when everything begins to shift toward machines, automation, and technology. And that transition is where harvesting changes completely, becoming faster, more efficient, and in some cases, almost unrecognizable compared to what we have seen so far. And that is exactly where we are heading next, into a level where entire fields can be harvested in hours instead of days, where machines replace dozens or even hundreds of workers, and where the speed of production reaches a completely different scale. This is where everything changes because we are no longer relying only on human strength and coordination. We are now entering a level where scale becomes so massive that machines take over entire operations. The difference is immediate. Because what used to take dozens or even hundreds of workers can now be done by a single system moving continuously across a field. And one of the most extreme examples of this is tomato harvesting, where specialized machines do not just pick the fruit. They harvest the entire plant in one pass, pulling it into the system and using a shaking mechanism to separate ripe tomatoes from stems within seconds. And this process happens non-stop as the machine moves forward, covering huge areas in a fraction of the time it would take humans, and the speed is so high that tons of tomatoes can be collected in just hours, which completely changes the scale of production. And once separated, the tomatoes move along conveyor belts where workers quickly remove damaged or unripe ones, before everything is transferred into massive storage containers. And this combination of machine speed and human inspection creates a system that is both efficient and controlled. But tomatoes are just the beginning, because similar transformations are happening with other crops, like onions, where harvesting machines dig directly into the soil, lift entire rows, and transfer them onto conveyor systems that remove dirt and prepare them for transport instantly, eliminating multiple steps that would normally require manual labor. This allows farms to process large volumes quickly while reducing the need for physical effort. And then we move to rice harvesting, which takes this concept even further. Because combine harvesters do everything in one continuous motion, cutting the stalks, separating the grains, storing them internally, and ejecting the leftover straw back onto the field, all while moving steadily forward. And this means that entire rice fields can be harvested with incredible efficiency, something that would have taken days or weeks in the past. And the impact of this is huge, because rice is one of the most consumed foods in the world. And meeting that demand requires speed at a massive scale, and machines make that possible. But not every fruit or crop can be fully automated. And that is where hybrid systems come in, combining machines with human workers to balance speed and quality. And bell peppers are a perfect example of this, because while some farms use vibrating machines to detach the peppers and move them along conveyors, workers are still needed to inspect and select only the ones that meet strict quality standards. Because even the most advanced machines cannot fully replace human judgment when it comes to appearance and condition. And this balance between automation and human control is what defines this level, because it allows production to scale up without completely sacrificing quality. And as we move further, we start to see machines not just assisting, but completely redefining the harvesting process. Like in hops production, where entire plants are cut, removed from trellises, and transported to facilities where the useful parts are separated and processed at high speed, turning what used to be a slow manual process into an industrial operation. And the same pattern continues across different crops, where efficiency becomes the main goal. Because when demand reaches global levels, there is no other way to keep up. And what makes this level so different from the previous one is that human limitations are no longer the main constraint. Machines remove those limits, allowing farms to operate faster, longer, and at a scale that would be impossible otherwise. But even with all this technology, there is still a level beyond this, because machines are powerful, but they are not perfect. They follow patterns, they repeat actions, and they cannot adapt to every situation. And that is why the next level is not just about bigger machines. It is about smarter systems, where technology begins to mimic human decision-making, identifying, selecting, and harvesting with precision that goes beyond simple automation. And that is where things become even more advanced. Because now we are entering a stage where machines are no longer just tools. They're becoming intelligent systems. And that shift is what leads us into the next level, where harvesting becomes faster, more precise, and in some cases, almost unbelievable. Now we are entering the highest level, where harvesting is no longer just about speed or strength, but about precision, intelligence, and extreme value. And this is where technology and perfection come together in ways that completely change how fruits are handled. Because at this stage, machines are no longer just cutting or collecting. They are making decisions, identifying which fruit is ready, which one should be left behind, and how to pick it without causing any damage. And one of the clearest examples is strawberry harvesting robots, where cameras constantly scan rows of plants, analyzing color, size, and position in real time. And once a ripe fruit is detected, a robotic arm moves in with controlled precision, cuts the stem cleanly, and places the fruit into a container without squeezing or dropping it. And this entire process repeats continuously, allowing farms to harvest with consistency that is difficult for humans to maintain over long periods. And a similar system is used in kiwi farms, where robotic arms are programmed to mimic the exact motion of human hands, gently twisting and detaching each fruit while avoiding scratches, because even small surface damage can reduce market value. And what makes these systems so powerful is not just their speed, but their ability to maintain quality while operating at scale, something that becomes increasingly important as global demand continues to rise. But even with all this technology, we have not reached the most extreme part yet, because beyond mass production and automation, there is a completely different category where harvesting becomes slower, more careful, and significantly more valuable. And this is where we move into premium and luxury fruit production, where every single fruit is treated as an individual product. And one of the most intense examples comes from Japan, where high-end mangoes are grown under controlled conditions and monitored constantly throughout their development. And instead of being harvested in bulk, each mango is individually protected, often wrapped or supported to prevent damage while still on the tree. And when it reaches the perfect level of ripeness, it is not picked quickly. It is carefully handled, checked for firmness, color, and surface quality, and then gently removed to avoid even the smallest imperfection. And the reason for this level of care becomes clear when you look at the value, because these mangoes can reach prices of up to $1,800 per kilogram, making them some of the most expensive fruits in the world. And at that price point, harvesting is no longer about efficiency. It is about perfection. Because a single flaw can reduce the value dramatically, and this completely changes the approach. Because instead of maximizing quantity, the focus is on achieving the highest possible quality for each individual fruit. And this is the exact opposite of what we saw in industrial harvesting, where speed and volume are the priority. And this contrast is what defines the highest level, because it shows how harvesting can exist at two extremes, one driven by scale and demand, and the other driven by precision and value. And what makes this level the climax is not just the technology or the price. It is the combination of everything we have seen so far: timing, skill, control, and now advanced systems working together to produce results that would not be possible otherwise. And at this point, harvesting is no longer just a task. It becomes a highly controlled process where every step is optimized, every detail matters, every outcome has significant value. And this is where the journey reaches its peak. Because we have gone from simple handpicking to machines harvesting entire fields, and now to systems that treat each fruit as a high-value product. And that progression shows just how far this process can go, from basic to extreme, from fast to precise, and from common to incredibly rare. And this is exactly why the world of fruit harvesting is far more complex than it appears. Because behind every fruit, there is a system, a method, and a level of effort that most people never get to see until now. After going through all these levels, from the simplest hand-picking methods to the most advanced robotic systems, and finally to fruits treated like luxury items, one thing becomes clear: fruit harvesting is not just a basic farming activity. It is a global operation built on precision, speed, skill, and constant adaptation. Because every single fruit that reaches the market has gone through a process that had to be exactly right at the right time. And when you scale that up to billions of pounds every year, the level of coordination required becomes almost hard to imagine. And what makes it even more impressive is how different these methods are depending on the goal, because in some cases, the focus is on harvesting as fast as possible to meet massive demand, using machines that can process entire fields in hours. While in other cases, the focus shifts completely toward perfection, where each fruit is handled individually, protected from damage, and prepared for high-end markets where quality matters more than quantity. And this contrast shows how flexible and complex modern agriculture has become, because it is not just about growing food. It is about meeting different standards, different markets, different expectations, all at the same time. And behind all of this are millions of workers, engineers, and systems working together. From people climbing tall trees and carrying heavy loads, to operators controlling machines, to developers designing robots that can identify and pick fruit with incredible accuracy. And all of these roles are connected in a chain that keeps global food supply moving. And when you look back at everything we have seen, from risky manual harvesting to high-speed industrial systems and precision luxury production, You start to understand that every fruit carries more than just nutritional value. It represents effort, technique, and a process that had to be executed correctly from start to finish. Because even a small mistake at any stage can affect quality, reduce value, or even result in total loss. And that is why harvesting is considered one of the most critical stages in agriculture, because it is the final step before the product reaches consumers. It determines whether all the work done before it was successful or not, and as global demand continues to grow. These systems will keep evolving, becoming faster, smarter, and more efficient, while still maintaining the level of quality required by different markets. And that means the future of harvesting will likely involve even more automation, more advanced technology, and more refined techniques that push the limits even further. But at the same time, many traditional methods will still remain. Because there are situations where human skill and judgment cannot be fully replaced. And this balance between tradition and innovation is what will continue to shape how food is produced around the world. And now that you have seen the full journey, from the easiest harvests to the most extreme and valuable ones, the next time you see a piece of fruit, you will know that behind it is a process that is far more complex, demanding, and impressive than it appears. That is exactly what makes this entire system so remarkable.